Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining with me. Glad that you're here, either if you're watching as I do this live or if you catch this at a later point. But we're going to be talking about Adam Hamilton's book, The Words of Life. Chapter 6 is where we are today, talking about the sixth commandment, the commandment that says, that you shall not kill, you shall not murder. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder. We've been getting together on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock over Zoom to kind of go through this study. If you're interested in joining with any of us, please let me know. If you're not getting the Zoom link and want it, I'll make sure to pass it along to you. This is a commandment that in some ways is very straightforward. It may seem kind of simple to understand, which it is on the surface, but it also leads to what can be some complicated conversations, and can also lead us to wonder, well, what does it mean in everyday life for most of us who never even consider taking someone else's life in violence? So a good kind of chapter to dig into. It's also one that, since it does kind of lead into some of these complicated areas, we'll get to that here in just a second. There's some of it that we'll just kind of touch on here in this recap, and if you ever want to dig more into it, you can do so in the book, or if you want to talk with me about any of it, feel free to. Give me a call, give me a text, and I'd love to chat with you. One of the things that Adam Hamilton has done throughout each of these chapters is there are videos that go along with them, and he has a conversation with a rabbi in his area to kind of get a perspective from the Jewish community on what these 10 commandments mean in their faith tradition, and how that might be very similar or different to what we as Christians see in these words. And the conversation that Hamilton and Rabbi Nemitov had together this time, I thought was very interesting, in that Nemitov kind of talked about how in the Jewish tradition, if you think of the 10 commandments, that they would break it down. And we've talked before about how the breakdown is a little bit different as to what we sometimes mean by the first, or that others mean by the first or the second, or the so on. But that in a kind of the Jewish tradition, you have 5 that are about your relationship with God, and 5 that are about your relationship with your neighbors. Our breakdown is probably a little bit different than that, but if you go with that 5 and 5, that what you often also find is that if you overlap those two, that you see some connection between how we relate to God and how we relate to others. And that if you look at the first commandment in their tradition's way of thinking it, saying, I am God, that God tells us, I alone am God. And then you look at this sixth commandment, the first that would overlap, we see this commandment not to kill, not to murder. That the connection there is that we as humans are made in the image of God, that everyone is made in the image of God. And so if you take someone else's life, you are destroying God's image, that in some ways you are even perpetuating a violence against God himself. And so that is why there is this kind of strong command: do not kill. Do not murder. And it's not just about murder in the first degree, as we might think about it, kind of in a modern context. But Hamilton shows how there are also verses that talk about kind of the wide range of things, from murder to manslaughter. That there are prohibitions in the Old Testament that if you have an ox that is known to gore, then you need to either provide extra protections around that animal or get rid of that animal or put it into a different way of service. That if you know that you have this ox that is prone to gore and that it then gores someone and causes their death, then their death is a guilt that is transferred to you. You have to, in some ways, pay restitution for that death, that you should have known better than to allow this animal to act in this way. Something that we might think of as maybe manslaughter. And that this command kind of covers that, as well as the kinds of acts of violence that we think about. The first murder in Scripture, Cain killing Abel out of jealousy. Some of the thornier issues that kind of get brought up, or maybe not even thorny being the right word, but the more complicated ones, the ones that take more discussion than we have necessarily time to do in a recap is, well, what does this verse say about our treatment of animals? We've been talking about this ox. What does this verse say about war? What does this verse say about capital punishment? What does this verse say about abortion? What does this verse say about self-defense? What does this verse say even about euthanasia? I may have said that already. I got kind of lost in my train of thought there. But that there are these other issues, both modern and kind of ancient, that this verse certainly has something to say about, but that there are also other considerations from Scripture that we look at in kind of coming up with a more full answer about what we believe about those things. And so as we kind of think about, I guess, not just the literal meaning of don't take someone's life, we also kind of look forward to the New Testament, to what Jesus says about these kind of understandings about this verse, and helps us also kind of get a grip on what does this mean kind of for everyday life for us as believers. So I'm going to read, let me find it here, and it's coming from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, where Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount says that you've heard that it was said, that you should not commit murder, and that all who commit murder will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with their brother or sister will be in danger of judgment. If they say to their brother or sister, "You idiot," or sometimes we hear this translated in different ways, or that they will be in danger of being condemned by the governing council. And if they say, "You fool," that they will be in danger of the fires of hell. Again, I think what Jesus is doing here is kind of taking seriously what we were saying before, that all people are people made in the image of God. And so you don't want to harm them, one, by a physical act of violence, but you also don't want to denigrate them or harm them even with your words. That you need to see the worth and the value that others have simply because God created them, simply because they are images of God, simply because God shows love for them. Jesus takes that a step beyond even what sometimes we think of as natural, because he tells us not only to love our neighbors as ourselves, but to love even our enemies and to pray for them. What Hamilton says about that, though, I guess in explaining it, not that he's contradicting it, but what he says is Loving one's enemies does not mean summoning warm feelings for them. It's to see them as a human being created in the image of God and to treat them as you wish they had treated you. It's like you're kind of being the change in the world that you want to see, even if that's not what you receive back from others, even if it's not what you experience from other people. You're living the way that you believe God has created us to live. We also even talked about how not only in the New Testament, but also in the Old Testament, we get these visions like the ones in Isaiah of the wolf and the lamb laying down together, that children will be able to play with poisonous snakes, that even humans and creatures, all of God's creation, will at least one day live in peace, and that is our goal. That is what we strive for, even as we know we're not there yet. So as we've done for these past few weeks, I do also want to kind of end with the words that Hamilton kind of imagines Jesus might be saying to us about this commandment. What Jesus might be saying to us is, I know that you would never intend to kill, but I'm asking more of you than that. I'm asking you not to harm others with your words or your deeds. More than that, I want you to remember that mercy is more powerful than vengeance, just as love is mightier than hate. When you bless those who hurt you, you'll find freedom for your soul, and you just might liberate the other as well. Blessings to you today. Look forward to meeting back with you again next week as we continue our study. God be with you. Bye-bye.